Welcome to another Walter Football video. I'm Charlie Campbell, Senior Draft Analyst. Today I wanted to get into how the COVID pandemic and the changes in college football this season is affecting NFL scouts and NFL front offices. For you fellow draftnicks out there, I thought you might find it interesting, and there's a lot of oddities to this year, once again in a different phase. That are impacting the NFL and NFL scouting departments. I wrote an article on this. You can go to walterfootball.com to check it out. It's in the hot press, but I'll try and condense it a little bit here to share it with you guys here on YouTube. So, 5 NFL teams, I've heard from team sources, are keeping their scouts at home this year. I know the Redskins for sure are one of them. Now the others, I've heard some like Chargers, Rams possibly, but I'm not exactly sure which 5 they are. But the Redskins are definitely one of them. But a few team people have told me that 5 teams, their scouts aren't going on the road at all. They're just completely evaluating off of tape. What they watch there, Zoom calls, working the phones for background, that kind of thing. So interestingly, you're going to have 5 teams not be at college campuses this year watching players, which is just shocking in the scouting community. Now, for the scouts that are going to teams, college teams, it's going to be really interesting because and very limited into what they can do. So it's varying depending on the school and conference from what I understand. But it sounds like there's going to be some practice access and maybe not for others. For games, it sounds like they won't allow the scouts. A lot of schools aren't going to be allowing the scouts on the field pre-game, which is something scouts like to do to get eye to eye with the players essentially and kind of get the body type and see how they carry their weight, that whole eyeball test that is part of the evaluation process. That's kind of being taken away without pregame field access. They're also some places at least are keeping scouts out of the press box and assigning them a different area where they can watch the game. And then some teams or schools are also limiting the access for teams where it's only one person for that team is allowed to go to anything school related. So you could have an area scout, a national scout, a director of college scouting, maybe another director over that, and a general manager. In a typical year, that's like 5 guys right there, and maybe a cross-check scout or an advanced scout for the next year's class, so that could be 6 or 7. So in the past years where you pretty much any of those guys would be able to go to a school, now only 1 is allowed. So that's going to be really interesting when it comes to the quarterbacks and the GMs, and teams like to see these guys in person. So who's going to be the representatives going to, say, Clemson to watch Trevor Lawrence, or the North Dakota State game with Trey Lance, or Florida with Kyle Trask, or Texas A&M with Kellen Mond, for example, of some of the quarterbacks who are actually playing. So this has set up kind of an interesting situation, too, where, with NFL teams looking at a loss of revenue this season from either no fans at the games or limited number of fans, teams themselves, people working at teams, there's rumors and talk of furloughs and layoffs and things like that. So even on the scouting and football side, there's talk of that. So this is a time where scouts in some ways are going to be asked to kind of show that they don't have to be furloughed or anything like that. But at the same time, teams really need to lean on them now more than ever in terms of the current situation with the contact scouts have at schools that other people at the team, higher ups, don't have necessarily. to get information on players, their character, their off-the-field habits. The scouts that go through those schools every year, they build up relationships with the coaching staff, with the other people that work in the athletic department, and they lean on them for helping to get information on the players and just to get background about how they grew up, their families, all sorts of things. So, any off the field concerns that were maybe overblown, that happens a lot. Definitely the teams are going to need their scouts this year more than ever, in my opinion. Now, also, one of the interesting things is going to be with Senior Bowl, East West Shrine. Senior Bowl said they're going to play. They're going to have their game regardless of what happens if the Big Ten doesn't come back or the Pac-12 doesn't happen, and players from those conferences will be eligible to play. And I've spoken with some scouts, and that is just a huge advantage for the players who had a fall season and then play in an all-star game to a guy who had no fall season and then just shows up in Mobile, Alabama or St. Pete, Florida, and is practicing against a guy who's been practicing and playing games for months. Just the rust factor alone is going to be such an advantage to the players that have played this fall. So that's one thing that will be interesting to see how that plays out. And now lastly, Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Bengals franchise quarterback, #1 overall pick in the last draft, he made a comment that I've heard from a few scouts that kind of was putting it mildly, where he said if COVID had happened last year and he was at a school that decided to cancel their season, he might not be playing football right now. He could be a grad assistant trying to get into coaching. He could be trying to get a different job in the regular non-sports world, because off of his junior year at LSU, he was really viewed as, going into last season, as a potential day 3 guy, and if that. So there's a lot of players right now that could miss out on an NFL career if they miss out on their senior season. It's just a crazy situation. And yeah, if right now, if Joe Burrow was at Ohio State, as coming off of the junior year like he had at LSU, he might not be a real pro prospect. So it's a terrible situation. You feel for the seniors who could be missing a season. They're in a really tough decision as to whether to go back, because if they have a delayed winter or spring season and then you get injured, there goes a rookie year that could kill where they go in the draft. So most scouts assume those guys will just leave and won't play that season. As Nick Saban said, it would basically be like a JV year with a loss of a lot of the draft eligible guys. But at the same time, even those late day 3 draft eligible guys, if they had a big senior year, they could skyrocket like Joe Burrow. So this is just a crazy year. I'll try and keep up with how teams and scouts are saying it's evolving, and I'll let you guys know what interesting things I hear and pass it along. But definitely do us a favor, like this video, share it, spread it around all your social media, follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Draft Campbell. You can follow Walt at Walter Football. We have new mock drafts going up all the time now. Walt has his season picks coming up here. Of course, position rankings for the 2021 draft and player profiles, scouting reports, everything, and rumors and more. So just go to walterfootball.com. It's all right there. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with you soon.